Meredith Williams-Range, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you? Other than my voice, I'm doing really good.
We're in the same boat. We might have to start signing here.
It may be
mid-session. So you and I were talking right before we got on the air, and you were telling me that this is your 14th?
18th conference.
18th.
Yes.
Okay.
18th.
And that in 2010, you know what? Before we do this, I think everybody knows you, but let's just do a quick intro. So Meredith Williams, what's your role? What are you doing now?
Sure. So I am the Chief Legal Operations Officer with Gibson Dunn, based in New York City. But I was born and raised in Tennessee, so I feel like I'm back home a little bit here. But no, my role is to kind of really critically think about strategically, how do our operations of Gibson Dunn operate today, knowing that the size and scale in which we are, and how do we effectively move and kind of can pivot necessary to serve our clients in the best way possible. So I get to work with a lot of fantastic, very intelligent people on a day-to-day basis, focused on all aspects of just operational components.
So you're from Tennessee, and you also spent quite a bit of time here when you were at Baker Donaldson, right?
I did. So I actually am licensed to practice here still in Tennessee. So I've been a lawyer for almost 25 years. And my first firm was Baker Donaldson, which is the #1 largest Tennessee law firm that exists, actually largest throughout the Southeast. And that firm is still very much home. I still have a ton of people that are there that are like, family to me. Absolutely.
They're a great firm. They're InfoDash customers. We love them.
They're a wonderful company. Wonderful company. Some really fantastic people. I had lunch yesterday with some of my old colleagues.
Did you?
I did.
David Ruff, maybe?
David Ruff, yeah. And also the CMO, Adam Severson. So I had lunch yesterday.
Yes. So I actually used, your name came up in an example with your friend Kate Kane, who was sitting in this seat 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So we were talking about how historically law firms have underinvested in technology, and how AI seems to be changing the game, loosening purse strings. And this is anecdotal, but I have made some observations, and what you're doing at Gibson Dunn is an example. Also what Glenn LaForce is doing at Holland & Knight. What I'm seeing is kind of big, older, really established firms bringing in talent and then seeing teams get built around them. Correct. Just like you're doing at Gibson Dunn. Do you think that's a broad trend? Do you think those things are happening in an isolated way?
I don't think they're isolated. I think there's a number of kind of competing things going on in the law firm industry. So you have to think about it at the macroeconomic level and the micro. And at the macro level, law firms are seeing pressure that they haven't seen before. And so what you're seeing, especially in like revenue, and you can look at this statistically, the top 10, top 15 are starting to pull away in kind of the revenue. And then you have everyone else. And what you're seeing is kind of firms starting to merge or thinking about merging and other aspects to that. But what they're starting to realize is architecturally and infrastructurally, they're not positioned to go down either that growth path naturally or in that unnatural way of a merger.
Yeah.
And so they're bringing in talent that can help think about that and how do you pivot to become that. And you referenced it, a lot of law firms are Luddites. And I say this, I'm a lawyer. Lawyers are risk-adverse individuals that go to law school to become more risk-adverse individuals. Mm-hmm. And change equals risk. Technology equals risk. All of those types of things. So there's a psychological reason why law firms typically have not invested in technology throughout the years. What is changing, though, is the business model of most law firms.
Right.
And what I mean by that is that as a law firm, we are traditionally what we call kind of a pyramid model. We hire large amounts of associates and we work our way up to partner.
Yep.
That's really starting to shift and has since 2008. And you really saw that with the crises, you saw that with COVID, but now with Gen AI in particular, you're seeing that triangle become more of a rocket model of growth for law firms, but the work still has to get done. And it's getting done by different types of individual, different talent is coming in. So people who maybe have practiced, other things are coming in. You may have staff lawyers, you may have project managers, you may have Gen AI. There's a really great article in The Economist from last June that says, the business model of law firms has withstood so much, but it will not withstand the Gen AI. It's going to just completely change what we're doing.
Do you know Jen Leonard?
Mm-hmm.
She's fantastic. I had her on the podcast a couple weeks ago. I don't know the episode's been released yet, actually. And she works in legal education.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, this was so interesting to me, how historically clients have subsidized new associate development.
Yeah.
Right. And some of the lower level tasks that have had partner oversight that junior associates have been responsible for completing, that's been part of the training model. Now with Gen AI potentially absorbing some of that work, either where's that training, how is that going to look different? Is it going to move more, push it down into the law firm side, or is it what's your take on that?
So education is key. Lawyers are still very much an apprentice type model. Mm-hmm. That's how we learn to do what we do. That's not going to change necessarily. And I say this, when you come out of law school, you are taught to think like a lawyer, but not necessarily how to be a lawyer and how to practice every single day. The struggle that we face now with Gen AI is so much of the way that we taught before, which was by doing, throwing them into a diligence room and reading through thousands of pages of documents, taught them how to actually negotiate a deal. It's just not the case anymore. We have AI that helps us go through the large data set. Same thing on the discovery side in litigation. So what we have to do a better job of is partnering with law schools to figure out how do we best prepare associates coming out of law school to serve for moment one. So that way we're not having the same issues that are being subsidized, as you referenced, by our clients. But also, how do they practice differently than we did? We want our associates to come out and be flexible and understand and know how to use technology. We want them to walk hand in hand with that tech, with that AI, and even recommend it to the partners that they're working with to say, no, wait a minute. We've got a value-based price on this deal or on this case. Why not use X, Y, and Z to make the best margin that we can? We want our associates to be ready to go for moment one. So we're developing boot camps that will prepare them. Our professional development team at Gibson Dunn are top-notch, and they are working with us and figuring out how do we really prepare our associates to really hit that ground running from an AI perspective, technology perspective, and also a practice management perspective.
You and I might have talked about this when you were on the podcast, but so I went to for grad school business, and really how out of touch.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. I had an operations professor who was using overheads. This is in. I mean, 2000.
You're aging us, man. You're aging us.
Well, and this
Stop.
This was like 2007 or. I graduated in like 2008 from grad school, and and he was using data sets from the 1970s, like airline, and it was so far the gap between what I needed to be successful, especially as an entrepreneur. Like, you can go work into a big company, and the curriculum will give you some advantages over not. As an entrepreneur, I could go on Khan's Academy and probably get better prepared to be an entrepreneur than through business school. Is the gap that wide on the law firm side as well?
Like I said, you're taught how to think like a lawyer, which is very key. You want to be able to critically look at fact patterns and understand how to draw different things in, but you're not prepared on how to practice law. You're not prepared on having a conversation with a client, how to communicate with a client, how do I bill my time? What is billable? What is not? Yeah. How do I need to educate myself? These are just the hows. You're not taught. There's a huge gap on the how side.
Yeah.
And what I would say is this: an associate journey is typically 7 to 9 years, right? Depending upon the law firm, depending upon what they're going through and their client base and things like that. There's a couple of inflection moments. When they're coming into a law firm is an inflection moment. You've got to learn how to be a lawyer and how to do that every day. And in today's world, technology needs to be a part of that every single moment that you are practicing. Then about 4th, 5th year, you have to decide kind of what do I want to be when I grow up? Do I want to go to be a litigator? Do I want to go become a transactional lawyer? Because you've been exposed to a lot in those first 4 years. And now you're pivoting into management a little bit of the matters. And it's learning different skill sets, learning different tech, learning different things that will help you. And then really around like 7th, 8th year, do I want to be partner? And how do I do that? And again, you're going from a worker bee to a manager bee to all the way up to completely strategist. They're different skill sets.
Yeah.
And we have to do a better job of educating our individuals and guiding them along that journey, no matter what firm or organization you're with. They're just not, no one's coming out of law school with that how knowledge. And that's where it gives us an opportunity, because the how today is so different than even the how 2 years ago before ChatGPT even came along.
100%. And like 6 months from now, the how
it's going to be so different.
Yeah. So you and I were on a panel in
just a few months ago.
Yeah, in New York it was such an interesting topic. And I want to do a podcast again when I know your schedule's crazy, but maybe we can touch on what we talked about there, because I got a lot of feedback afterwards, like, wow, that was really good and really interesting. And we were talking about just the organizational dynamics that AI brings to the table, and like where it sits, where does it live? Does it live in innovation? Does it live in KM? Does it live in IT? You could make an argument for
anywhere,
all of that. And you brought up some good points about culture, and like maybe you can recap kind of what we talked about then. But how do you feel like culture influences organizational design in a firm?
So I've been at 3 big law firms and in my career path, and culture drives so much. It drives the people that are in position of power. It drives, where different skill sets sit and different tasks sit. I mean, you and I have talked about this. In my first firm, I firmly focused on knowledge management. And yes, I had innovation a little bit, but that was spread in different areas. Moving into where I was in Sherman and Sterling, it was a mixed bag of sanctions and conflicts and KM and innovation and IT and all of these things together. It's very different no matter where you go, and culture is always going to be key. It's the culture is going to eat strategy for lunch every day, as the saying goes.
Yeah.
But what else is this? And we talked about this on that panel. There's no wrong answer to where AI and innovation should sit.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in that innovation sits everywhere.
Yeah.
You need to have point people that will help challenge and help drive the innovation and asking the right questions. But everybody needs to be innovative. And I sit in a unique seat that I get to help ask those questions of all different groups all the time. But like great examples, right now I've been traveling a lot lately and talking about the secretary of today and the paralegal of today and challenging that norm. So many times people look at the word improvement as a bad word. It's not. It means the world around us has changed. Therefore, we should figure out how we need to change and how we need to pivot. So to me, that's innovation. All of us should innovate how we're working, what we're doing, how we're collaborating, all of that on a day-to-day basis. Innovation can happen in HR. It can happen in IT. It can happen in knowledge management. It can happen everywhere. I'm also, again, a firm believer in that you need to have a driving force. So the way we're structuring is we're putting innovation in AI with KM at Gibson Dunn. They're going to be a driving force to ask a lot of those questions.
And that's part of the title of the job that you're recruiting, right?
Recruiting for right now is Chief Knowledge and AI Officer.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yep.
If you know anyone, give me a call.
Yeah.
Out there, give me a call. But I would say that having a team that's forced and asking the right questions to help people innovate is always pivotal, because a lot of times we're operationally drowning in just the day-to-day. But having those pause moments to say, how can I do this better? Just because we've done it the same way for 10 years or even 2 years, there's new tech today to do it differently. Could AI help us do this differently? Those types of things. So to me, innovation needs to be pervasive, needs to be everywhere. Everyone needs to be open to innovation and open to AI being kind of your buddy and walking along that journey, but also having a team that's dedicated to help ask those right questions when they need to be asked is also a need.
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw my post. Did you see my 10 years of innovation?
I did.
Yeah. It was neat to go back, and
it's such a different world today than 10 years ago.
Oh, totally. And there were 16 people that had the word innovation in their title on the ILTA roster.
Yep.
There's over 300 today.
Yeah.
I think we're in
what about AI now?
Right. Exactly. I was going to say, there's not even 16 that have AI in their title today. Last I looked anyhow, but there are a few, and it's growing. So I think I don't think it's going to take 10 years
to reach what we are with innovation.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that growth curve is going to be much steeper. And there is so much innovation theater that's going on but I do feel like now the purse strings have loosened a tad. And I think that there are data points to support that the mindset is changing, at the EC level, because we're seeing people like you come in, build a big team of all-stars. So is that your take as well, that maybe some of this AI is, there's been a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Yep.
When that Goldman report came out and said like 49% of all legal tasks can be automated with AI, I think people were
taken aback.
Yeah, especially people who normally don't get rattled.
Yeah.
Right, in law firm leadership. Do you think that has driven some of the things like you're doing now?
I think it's that. I think it's competition. I think the client demand is different.
Yeah,
it's different. There's not a week that passes that I don't have the opportunity of speaking with one of our clients around what we're doing for them today and how we're doing it differently.
Yeah.
And I would say in the past 3 to 4 months alone, the number of clients that I've had the opportunity to speak with where they wanted to know about our AI journey, how we're going to integrate it, how it's going to change what we do for them, how it's going to increase quality, all of those types of questions.
How do they ask and when do they ask? Is this like RFP time? Like
that depends. A lot of times it's the relationship. And so we may have like a quarterly check-in with the relationship, and then they'll ask to talk about AI. So it depends. Sometimes it's an RFP, sometimes it's a panel prep, sometimes it's auditing as well. So there's never a bad opportunity to take when you actually want to talk about that. But I would say at least once a week over the past few months, there's been at least one client per week that have asked about that.
Wow.
And it's a lot around how are we going to do the job better for them with all the tools at our disposal. But also they want to understand that we're doing it ethically. That's a very critical thing. They're concerned about security, concerned about confidentiality, concerned about bias, all of the elements around ethics. These are all the questions they ask.
Are they concerned about their bill getting lower?
That has not necessarily been the question.
Okay.
No, because, it's interesting because if we do alternative pricing, if we do the value-based pricing, the bill's not going to change.
Right.
Now, and I'm not sure if anybody else has talked about this on this podcast, the opinion that came out 2 weeks ago from the ABA, the 512, talked about fees, in particular as they relate to Gen AI.
Yeah.
And the pass-through to that equated to a lot to the Lexus pass-through and the Westlaw pass-through that we've seen for decades. But we do have a duty as lawyers not to overcharge our clients.
Right.
And so I think we're going to see that flex over the course of the next couple of years. I'm not sure where that's going to land.
So
is it going to be like electricity where we build it into our just general fees that
overhead.
The general overhead, or are we going to do pass through? Maybe it's both.
Yeah. Or maybe it varies by practice area.
Correct.
I would imagine there are some practice areas that are going to require more significant investment in these technologies than others.
Probably.
Right. Litigation, probably what you're buying isn't necessary. You're buying effective lawyering.
Yeah.
Patents, for example, researching and
very systematic.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about the conference. So we're here. It's 2014. I'm sorry, 2024. 2014 was the last time it was in Nashville.
It's been a minute.
It's been 10 years.
It's been a minute. Yeah.
Tell me about this conference in terms of the content. Did you see our KM&I guide?
I did.
So we included a word cloud that somebody else where they just put all the sessions through and saw the top words. Of course, the AI and data were number 1 and 2. Not surprising at all. But have there been any interesting themes, takeaways, dynamics that you've noticed this year?
Man, so as I said, this is my 18th conference.
Yeah.
So one of the things I take away from the conference are not only the sessions, but the networking. I love to talk to my peers, to talk to my partners, to kind of figure out how we can best move forward to develop unique things moving forward. There's been a lot of really great stuff. The keynote was probably one of my favorites.
Which one?
Day one.
Okay. So the mathematician?
Mathematician.
Yeah.
And she was brilliant.
Yeah.
And just the deadpan of some of the delivery was just comical. But I'm also a math and data nerd, so I love all of that.
So am I.
But I thought it was just very interesting teaching us about, again, with data, with AI, with all the different things, just because you can does not mean that you should. And having governance models in place that stop and ask the right questions of should we be doing this, I thought was a very interesting takeaway that I took from her. I thought Hannah Fry is her name. She was amazing. I just absolutely loved her. Probably my favorite session. There's a closed session for kind of innovation leads at different firms, and there's about probably 40 people that attend. And it's really an open dialogue of who's dealing with what and what are the issues of the day. And
what's that called?
It's the CINO, which is kind of an innovation leadership. It's an invite only kind of group.
Does ILTA put it together?
ILTA puts it together. Okay. Joy runs it. It's similar to like the G100 for the CIOs and things like that. It's fantastic because you're there and you're openly talking about the current issues of the day.
Yeah.
So I brought up like the ABA Opinion 512, which is of course the new thing around how we use generative AI and should we have informed client consent to use AI and all these different elements. How should we charge? And so it's a 2-hour session from everyone from Australia and the UK and the US, and we're talking in Canada and Brazil. So we were able to really talk at length around how each one of us are commercializing different things. And then we had a privilege of the CIO from Zoom come in, and we were asking him things around AI and other things like that. So it was a really fantastic 2 hours. That to me is kind of a combination of a session and networking all rolled into one. And I love that.
How did that? So that sounds a lot like Skills.
It is. It's very similar. Because Skills is 6 months from now.
Right.
And so this gives us that check-in right now.
Sure.
It came about naturally just a few years ago where we were all saying we really want to get together at conference, and kind of naturally occurred. And then it became a scheduled thing. So yeah, we just met yesterday.
Interesting. I wasn't even aware of it.
We keep it closed.
Yeah.
We purposely do so that way we can talk about lots of different elements. It's similar to like the G100.
Right. What about, how much time have you spent on the exhibit floor?
A fair amount.
Have you?
Yes.
Have you been by our booth?
Not yet, but I was going there just a few moments ago.
Okay.
So yes.
All right. We know how much you love InfoDash, but besides InfoDash, tell me, is there anything else that stuck out there? Like, have you gone down Startup Alley?
I have not had a chance to do that. I'm going to do that this afternoon.
Anything interesting jumping out there? I would imagine with all of this new AI stuff, you're probably already keeping your ear to the ground, but anything interesting pop up?
So it's interesting. I do have the great privilege of talking to a lot of people on a regular basis. And so, you know, one of the critical teams, the cross-functional teams I've had the privilege of kind of creating at Gibson is an AI execution team, which is focused on really talking to everybody possible that's doing AI. And so some of the fun ones are both on the business operations side and some are on the practice side. So Harvey, I love. Are they exhibiting here? They're exhibiting and they're doing some fantastic stuff. I would say they're probably at the top of my list. I would also say I love the TR team. They're doing some really unique stuff as well. There's a group called ODDR, which are doing some really interesting stuff on the finance and billing side. And it's actually the connection with the client to actually streamline some of that. And they're using some AI to do that. I think they're doing some really unique stuff. I've seen them and talked to them a couple of times. There's a lot of great exhibits going on right now. I mean, again, that's one of the reasons I love ILTA is you get the peer connection, but you get the partner connection. Where else am I going to be able to spend 20 minutes and talk to like 30 different companies and talk about how we can best partner together? I love that.
So do you...
Latera's also got some fun stuff in there as well. So.
Yep. How about, do you attend TLTF?
I typically do not, no.
Because that is a place where kind of the emerging, more early stage... ILTA has done a really good job, I think, with the Startup Alley. In fact, we did it. We've been around for a long time. We
started that when I was president for ILTA. So that started a long time ago.
Oh, I did not realize that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, we've been around a long time. You and I have known each other for a long time. And we were AcroWire back in the day. We built the same solution so many times. We decided to productize. We rebranded. So we were essentially a startup again. Yeah. So we did the Startup Alley couple years ago in DC. And, it was a great way because, when you're starting out, especially if you're not venture backed, like things are tight.
Well, you've got to pick and choose your right
Right.
opportunities of where you're going to have the right people,
Yep.
those key decision makers coming by.
Yeah.
And, this is an opportunity where you're getting a lot of critical C-levels and directors that are going to stop by that are those decision makers. So I love the fact that ILTA does that Startup Alley at a discounted cost for a lot of
Yes.
those individuals.
Right.
Because it just gives it's a unique opportunity for a new company who none of us have met. None
Yes.
of us have any idea about.
Yeah. So, and if you want to get even further upstream,
Yeah.
I'm going to give TLTF a plug. It is a fantastic conference. It's invite only.
Yeah.
You have to apply if you're a startup. We're going to pitch this year, even though we're not really looking for venture funding.
Okay.
But we may at some point, and it's such a good opportunity. There are a lot of people like you there.
Okay.
Which last year was my first year. I was surprised by that. I thought it would have been just investors and startups.
Yeah.
There's a ton of people like you who like to
That'd
keep
be
their
fun.
ear to the ground.
That'd be a lot of fun. Yeah.
They're more early. They're more early stage. A lot of them are kind of even pre-revenue.
That's okay.
Yeah, no, it is, and it's a good way to really.
If it's a good idea, you want to help foster that idea.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's a good mechanism. They say product market fit happens between like 0 and $1 million in revenue, right?
Yeah.
So those that are closer to 0, this gives them away. I don't know what.
Well, it could give the way I think about it is think about how many different operational aspects there are to a law firm.
Mhm.
And if you're a startup and you've got an idea, you get to run it past people who know whether or not that's going to work or not,
Yep.
or whether or not that's a real life problem on the back end, either for a large or a small firm.
Yep.
And that's unique opportunity.
That
It's a
is.
really unique opportunity.
That is. And
What's your favorite part of conference so far?
that is a really good question. I'm gonna
Other
go.
than this.
I am gonna go with the music.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just the guys playing in the local bar are absolutely phenomenal, and it just creates such a good energy
Yeah.
that I love it. And I think they're going to cut us off
Yeah.
here at 30 minutes, but it is always a pleasure
Absolutely. Thank
to
you so
sit
much for
next
having
to
me.
you and talk and learn, and you're so easy to talk to. And I'm going to get you back on the podcast again.
Anytime.
Okay.
Anytime. As long as I'm not traveling.
Right, I'll let you catch your breath from the conference.
Let me catch my voice back.
Yeah, that's true. I know.
That's
I'm
it.
losing mine too. All right. Well, thanks for being on.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course.